I'm Maurice Powell. Welcome to A Little Light Music, Manx Radio's regular Thursday evening classical music hour. Now, it's a long time since we began a programme with the music of John Philip Sousa, the American March King, but we're going to put that right now. It's not actually a march, it's a miniature tone poem, or it's an evocation in music. This is called the Chariot Race. It begins with 4 faint offstage trumpets, very moody, and then you hear saxophones and tubas imitating the rumble of horse hooves. It's a very unusual piece. We're used to the marches, aren't we? Liberty Bell, Washington Post and so on. This is Sousa in a slightly different frame of mind. The Chariot Race. Well, a chariot race there by John Philip Sousa, the American March King. Bit of a bumpy ride. I like the whip sounds in the background. It's certainly a piece full of sort of what you might call virtuoso swagger. And was there a hint of Wagner, maybe, in some of the brass writing? Anyway, not the usual kind of Sousa march we expect. Now, Sousa came to the Isle of Man, I think it was in the 1890s. Don't quote me on that. A part of a world tour, and he came here. Absolutely amazing. The newspapers were, of course, full of praise. He was by far the greatest band leader that had ever been to the island. And the musical pundits in the audiences noted, of course, how smart the band was in their sort of military-style uniforms, and they admired Sousa's sort of economical style of conducting with sort of little military band type strokes. Must have been an absolutely incredible occasion. So, now, I did not know, or I had forgotten, that Kurt Weill, the German composer, popular in the 1930s and then, of course, on Broadway, I did not know that he wrote September Song. I thought it was someone like Mel Torme or somebody like that. Anyway, Kurt Weill, best known, of course, in the 30s for his collaborations with the poet Bertolt Brecht, the Threepenny Opera, of course, with the eponymous Mac the Knife, and other works as well, City of Mahagony, Seven Deadly Sins. But of course he left Germany in the 30s, like so many fine musicians and composers, and established himself on Broadway and wrote music in a completely different style to what we've become familiar with in such works, as I say, as the Threepenny Opera. September Song then appeared in the 1938 Broadway musical Knickerbocker Holiday. I confess I've never seen it or heard a note from it. And in the musical, it was a song for one of the main characters, Peter Stuyvesant, the governor of New Netherland, in the story. It's played for us this evening by the Pittsburgh Strings. Kurt Weill's September Song. Kurt Weill's September Song. I love those sort of swoopy strings. A little bit reminiscent of the Melocrino strings used to be on popular on the radio, donkeys years ago. Or Mantovani and his cascading string sound. That was actually the Pittsburgh strings. Kurt Weill. Well, we started off with the King, or the American March King, Sousa. And now we come, of course, to the king of British light music, Eric Coates. This is an idyll entitled Summer Afternoon, recorded in May 1934 with Eric Coates himself conducting, so it has a lot of authenticity, this particular recording. It's one of many little orchestral tone poems or musical portraits that he wrote. They never outstay their welcome. They're lyrical, beautifully orchestrated. What's not to like? Eric Coates, Summer Afternoon. The music of Eric Coates, the idyll Summer Afternoon, recorded 1934, I think I said, May 1934, and still sounding pretty good. Let's have a little bit of choral music now, something I've never played before, although the composer appears fairly frequently in this series of programmes. I'm talking of Gustav Holst, of course most famous for the orchestral suite The Planets. But he wrote much else, including some wonderful choral and sacred music. I'm thinking of the Hymn of Jesus, the very little known but absolutely amazing The Cloud Messenger. There are lots of shorter pieces. There's an Ode to Death, a choral fantasia, several four-part songs, and many other things as well. I'm going to play a short piece for a choir in 8 parts called The Evening Watch. The words were written in 1650 by Henry Vaughan, and it was first performed at the Three Choirs Festival in Gloucester in 1925, and the choir found it rather difficult. It's quite an austere piece, and yet the harmonies are quite lush and chromatic. I think they found it quite a challenge. What else can I tell you about it? The words are rather sort of metaphysical, I suppose you'd say. It's really, the poem is a kind of an exchange between the body and the soul. It's a beautiful piece, if a little austere, and I hope you enjoy it. It's in 8 parts, so it's not easy to perform. Holst's The Evening Watch. Gustav Holst, The Evening Watch, an extraordinarily intense piece, perhaps not an everyday concert piece, and not something that a lot of choirs would consider tackling. And as I say, in 1925 at the Three Choirs Festival, they certainly found it challenging. Nevertheless, it's a piece that can grow on you. Now then, an announcement. Well, first of all, of course, if you've just tuned in, you're listening to me, Maurice Powell, and this is A Little Light Music, and you're very welcome. But this concerns the Isle of Man Symphony Orchestra's gala concert this year, which takes place in the Royal Hall at the Villa Marina, of course, on November the 24th at 2:30 p.m. So that's Sunday, November the 24th, Villa Marina, 2:30 p.m, Isle of Man Symphony Orchestra Gala Concert. Now, for me, this is a special concert because it's the last occasion on which I'll have the privilege of conducting the orchestra. I've been associated with the orchestra for more than a quarter of a century, first as a player, but since 2004 as its principal musical director. So I'll have clocked up 20 years, and I'm going to retire, devote my energies, of course, to this programme, but also to writing. I have 2 or 3 books and 1,000 articles to write, and I really do need much more time for that. Conducting the orchestra, well, it's been great fun. It's been quite a journey, and more of that in due course. But my last concert, obviously, is a special one. The main work will be the cello concerto of Elgar, and our soloist is the Polish player living in London, Eva Mizerska. She's appeared twice at the Ramsey Music Society concerts, and she also appeared with 2 other musicians when we performed Beethoven's Triple Concerto 2 or 3 seasons ago. The programme also includes music by Walton, Delius and Vaughan Williams, the lovely variations for strings and harp on Dives and Lazarus. The main work in the second half is Elgar's fantastic concert overture, or tone poem really, in the South. So, a wonderful concert. So tickets are of course on sale at the Villa. That's villagaiety.com, or you can telephone 600 555 for tickets, and the tickets are already selling and very well indeed, which is hardly surprising. What else can I tell you? Nothing much. I'll be there, of course. Best Bib and Tucker, and I hope as many of you will be there as possible. Elgar Cello Concerto with Eva Mizerska, not to be missed. So, where do we go now? I think we want a short piece. Now, we had a piece for strings, the Kurt Weill September song. Here's a piece of British light music for strings by Eric Sidday. Not a name that you may be familiar with, but in common with many of his contemporaries, he served his apprenticeship in the music business by playing the violin in some of the finest dance bands of the 20s and 30s, including the bands of Ambrose, Ray Noble and Carol Gibbons. Now, Luna Park is a little piece I'm going to play, a typical example of catchy string tunes which were so popular 50 or 60 years ago. Pieces like these are an absolute gift, of course, for newsreels and interludes on the early days of television, and whenever you needed a piece of music to accompany happy, carefree situations. So, Luna Park by Eric Sidday. Well, a jolly little piece there by Eric Sidday. You can just imagine that as the background to a newsreel about happy holidays and all the rest of it. Chopin. I don't play a lot of Chopin. I mean, it's not particularly associated with light music, although, of course, he wrote hundreds of short piano pieces, and they do fit very well into this sort of programme. But I've not really played a major piece of Chopin for some time. And so I'm going to put that right now by playing the wonderful Larghetto from his second piano concerto. That's the one in F minor, Opus 11. It's one of these lovely sort of cantilena pieces where the piano simply takes over and the orchestra is reduced really to sort of accompanying role. It's a very beautiful piece. It's thought that it's a kind of a love letter to a secret love he had for a singer called Konstanza Gladkowska. I don't know how it worked out. Probably it didn't work out at all. But nevertheless, and he wrote, I wrote the slow movement of my concerto while my thoughts were with her. This was in 1829. He was aged around 20. The concerto was first heard the following year in Warsaw, of course with Chopin playing. It's a nocturne of undescribable beauty, according to one commentator. It certainly is sublime. Here we are, the Larghetto from Chopin's second piano concerto. Well, a lovely piece of music, the slow movement, the Larghetto from Chopin's Piano Concerto Number 2. Truly a love letter in music. Where to now? Well, I think the music of Roger Quilter, an underrated English composer in my view. He was born in 1877, he died in 1953. You might think his talent was a little bit on the slender side, and it is true to say that his style didn't change very much from the early 20th century right through until the 1950s. But no matter, his music is amiable, lyrical, wistful, very inventive. He suffered from ill health most of his life, sadly, and that included sort of bouts of melancholy and depression. And there were times when really he was kind of blocked mentally from composing for quite long periods of time. But nevertheless, the music that he has left, including a number of very fine songs, incidentally, is well worth getting to know. I hope to play a little bit later on in the programme, but we'll see how much time we have. I'm going to start anyway with his Children's Overture. This was written in 1911 and was intended to be the overture to a children's fairy play, Where the Rainbow Ends. But he abandoned this particular overture and wrote a much shorter piece to go with the play. He returned to it in 1919 and then fashioned it into a full-length concert overture. It's made up entirely of a skillfully wrought fantasy on well-known British nursery tunes. You can see if you can spot them. I mean, there's obvious ones like Bar Bar Black Sheep, Boys and Girls Come Out to Play, Pom Paul's Steeple Stands, lots of rounds, Dame Get Up and Bake Your Pies, I Saw Three Ships, Sing a Song at Sixpence, There Was a Lady Loved a Swine, don't know that one, Over the Hills and Far Away, Crow and the Frog, don't know that one either, Bar Bar Black Sheep again, Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush, and so on and so forth. It's, I say, a kind of a medley of all these tunes, but it's so skillfully written, it makes a very fine concert piece. Roger Quilter's Children's Overture. Roger Quilter's Children's Overture, a wonderful medley of children's songs from a bygone age. And that brings us to the end of the programme. Doesn't this hour go quickly? Please join me again next Thursday at 9 when I hope to produce a very interesting recording of Hayden Wood, of course our adopted Manx composer and one of the finest English light music composers. Someone to play us out with. Colin Smith's Looking Around. Goodbye.